At some point in your life, you may need surgery. You'll probably lie on a hospital bed, count backward from 10, drift into sleep, and wake up with the operation already finished. It feels so normal today that most people never stop to think about it. But less than 2 centuries ago, that simple experience didn't exist. If you needed surgery in the early 1840s, you stayed awake for every single second. You saw the knives, you heard the saws, and you felt everything. Imagine living in London in 1842. A terrible accident has crushed your leg, leaving the bone exposed. Days later, the wound begins turning black, giving off a sickening smell that tells everyone infection has taken hold. The surgeon examines you for only a few moments before delivering a brutal choice. Either lose your leg tomorrow morning or lose your life within days. There are no antibiotics, no modern treatments, and no miracle drugs. Surgery is your only chance. That night, sleep is almost impossible. Fear consumes every thought because everyone knows exactly what the operation will involve. When morning comes, assistants guide you upstairs to the operating theater, a room designed with rows of seats where medical students gather to watch. Natural sunlight pours through a skylight because electric lighting doesn't exist yet. The wooden table at the center of the room is stained from countless operations before yours, while fresh sawdust waits underneath to soak up the blood. The preparation is painfully simple. A glass of strong liquor may calm your nerves. If you're fortunate, you receive a small amount of opium. A strip of leather is handed to you so your teeth don't shatter from biting down. Deep inside, everyone knows these things won't stop the pain. They're only there to give the illusion of comfort. Before the first cut is made, several assistants grip your arms and legs as tightly as possible. They aren't expecting bravery or weakness. They're preparing for instinct. No matter how determined a patient may be, the human body naturally struggles to escape unbearable pain. The suffering that followed was recorded by people who survived it. One of the most famous accounts came from novelist Fanny Burney, who underwent a breast operation without anesthesia. She described screaming continuously while surgeons worked, feeling the blade scrape against bone, and losing consciousness only to wake up before the operation had ended. Years later, she admitted the memory still haunted her. Another survivor, Scottish scientist George Wilson, later explained that the physical pain wasn't the worst part. He remembered hearing every instrument laid onto the table and feeling every movement of the surgeon's hands. But what truly stayed with him was the overwhelming terror, the feeling of complete helplessness and isolation, as though hope itself had disappeared. Surgeons understood exactly what their patients endured. Contrary to popular belief, most weren't cruel men. They simply had no reliable way to block pain. Their only weapon was speed. The faster an operation ended, the greater the chance a patient would survive both the agony and the dangerous shock that often followed. No surgeon became more famous for speed than Robert Liston. He could remove a leg in only a few minutes, astonishing everyone who watched. Medical students even timed his procedures with pocket watches. Every second mattered because prolonged pain frequently pushed patients beyond recovery. Although his methods looked brutal, Liston's survival rates were considered among the best of his era. Yet surviving the operation itself was only half the battle. The invisible enemy waiting afterward proved even deadlier. At the time, doctors had no understanding of bacteria or germs. Surgical instruments were wiped clean and immediately reused. Blood-covered coats were worn repeatedly as symbols of experience. Sponges passed from one patient to another without proper cleaning. Hospitals unknowingly became perfect breeding grounds for deadly infections. When wounds filled with thick pus, many doctors actually celebrated, believing it showed healthy healing. In reality, the infection was spreading deeper into the body. Fever often arrived days after surgery, and for many patients, that fever became a death sentence. In some hospitals, nearly half of those who underwent major amputations never returned home. Everything began to change because a few people challenged accepted beliefs. Hungarian physician Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that simply washing hands dramatically reduced deaths among patients. Instead of celebrating his findings, much of the medical community rejected them. Many doctors felt insulted by the suggestion that their own hands carried disease. Semmelweis spent years defending his evidence but died before his ideas gained widespread acceptance. Then came one extraordinary day that changed surgery forever. On October 16, 1846, at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, a young man named Edward Gilbert Abbott agreed to undergo surgery after inhaling ether, a substance that could render him unconscious. The operating room filled with skeptical doctors expecting another failed experiment. The patient drifted into sleep. The surgeon made the first incision. Silence filled the room. There were no screams, No desperate struggle. No assistance forcing the patient to stay still. For the first time, a surgeon completed an operation while the patient remained peacefully unconscious. When the man awoke, he reported feeling almost no pain. The surgeon looked at the stunned audience and declared that this was no trick. Medicine had entered a new era. The discovery spread rapidly around the world. Surgeons who had spent entire careers operating unconscious patients suddenly realized that unimaginable suffering could become a thing of the past. Over the following years, anesthesia transformed surgery from an experience of terror into one of hope. Later advances in antiseptic techniques and sterile practices finally reduced the deadly infections that had claimed countless lives. Today, millions of people undergo surgery every year without remembering the procedure itself. They wake up expecting medication, clean rooms, and careful monitoring. It's easy to take those comforts for granted, but every painless operation performed today exists because generations before us endured unimaginable suffering, while a handful of determined pioneers refused to accept that unbearable pain and deadly infection had to remain part of medicine forever.